Hello and welcome to the Strength Stacking Bible. This video is a guide, but it's not a guide to a specific Path of Exile build, it's a guide to the concept of stacking strength in Path of Exile. Why you would do it, how to do it, what does strength even do, where do I get strength, everything is going to be covered in this video. But this video is made in 3.16, so I want to start out with the basics and what's changed in 3.16. So the primary difference that we have here on our current patch is that Iron Will has been put onto the tree. A lot of people saw this and a lot of people got very excited. Lots of comments. I want to stack strength. I'm so excited to stack strength. What this does is it makes it so that strength's bonus applies to spell damage as well as melee physical damage, which is what it applies to by default. Now, before I get too much into that, I'll note there was a previous way to get Iron Will, a few ways actually, but the most popular one was through the Repentance Gloves, which had a very high intelligence requirement of 300 and a high strength requirement of 300. Now the strength requirement, obviously that's not a big deal, but the intelligence requirement made it so that strength stackers had to get a large amount of this other attribute, which maybe they didn't necessarily care about as much depending on the build. So this is basically a buff for all those builds that existed before, and it's brought a lot of excitement into this type of build. So for the basics, I need to go over how strength stacking works and what it does. So every 10 strength that you get gives you 2% increased melee physical damage. That's just how strength works by default. It also gives you HP, but we're not going to worry about that. Iron Will makes it so that bonus applies to spell damage as well as to melee physical damage. There's a unique called Iron Fortress. It makes the bonus increase from 2% to 3%. And if you have Iron Will and Iron Fortress in the same build, it makes that 3% work on the spell damage as well. And there's another unique called Crown of Eyes, which makes you get increased effect from spell damage, and it applies as attack damage, generic attack damage. So if you use Iron Will, Iron Fortress, and Crown of Eyes together, 10 strength equals 4.5% increased generic attack damage, which is quite a bit. And important to note about generic attack damage, it works on projectiles, it works on areas of effects, it works on pretty much anything. Elemental damage, chaos damage, every damage type. As long as you're doing it with a weapon, it works. Alright, now we're going to talk about flat damage sources. You already know that strength can increase your damage in various ways, but how do you actually get flat damage onto your attacks? Now, not every strength stacker is an attacker, but all of these items I'm about to link are attack orientated. So, over in S tier, we have Brutus Lead Sprinkler. It can be a little pricey for a perfect one, but it's definitely worth it. It gives 4 to 7 fire damage per 10 strength. So that means that 1000 strength is 550 average damage. It has good attacks per second. It has great base critical strike chance. It makes this item an amazing strength stacking option. You're going to see chieftains playing with this item and doing consecrated path totems, or maybe they're even self-attacking with Infernal Blow. Just below Brutus Lead Sprinkler, we have Replica Alberon's Warpath. This is an expensive item, and it's going to be a very expensive item, but it gives an absolutely incredible amount of chaos damage. 1 to 80 chaos per 80 strength. Note that it says you cannot deal non-chaos damage, so that means that anything else that you have in your toolkit is completely disabled. You have to be doing chaos damage. Over in the B tier, we have Elder Hunter Eclipse Staff. This is an item that you can craft with an Awakener's Orb. You get the tier 1 fire damage to attacks per 10 strength and the 1% spell damage per 10 strength. Note that both of these mods can spawn on a hunter item naturally, but usually Awakener's Orbing can be like a cheaper way if you just want those two mods and you don't care about much else. The reason why this item and the sword below are in B tier is because, one, they're incredibly difficult to craft, and two, because of that, you just don't really see people using them. I think that there is a lot of opportunity here for extremely high-end damage, but you need like attack speed rolls, crit rolls, maybe some added extra damage, or maybe even fire penetration on here. 3 to 5 damage is just smaller than 4 to 7. The attack speed is worse, the crit chance is worse, and with the jeweled foil, this is the other option. You can either get it on Shaper or Hunter. Note that the spell damage variant doesn't spawn on one-handers. That's staff only. The attack speed can be higher. The crit can be higher if you get the right suffixes. But I've never seen anyone use these items before in a build. They're not bad. They're just very, very rare and very expensive to craft. Over in the D tier, these are items that you basically never see anyone use, but they do exist, so they're worth noting. This is a ballista meme item where you get flat physical damage per 25 strength, and you also get bonus ballista totems per 200 strength. So I actually saw a replica Iron Commander bow when I was looking through builds. He had 25k DPS on his shrapnel totem, and he had an active totem limit of 15. So it looked funny, looked pretty funny. And finally, we have Hiri's Demise. It's in D tier because this is like a leveling item. This is a prophesied item. It's an upgrade of the other Hiri quiver. It's got damage per int, damage per strength, and damage per dex. That's all there is to it. You'd probably use it if you were going to use Replica Iron Commander. I guess. Okay, so in the intro I listed 2 items that can increase your damage scaling from strength, but there's a lot more than that, and you're going to need to know them if you want to make a really good strength stacking build. So over in the S tier, we got Crown of Eyes. I already talked about this, but basically it makes your spell damage more effective, and it makes it work on attacks. This is required to have Iron Will to function with strength stacking, but Iron Will is right next to the life wheel. It's over here. It's in a great spot, very easy to get for any strength stacker. Iron Fortress. This item has a huge roll range for strength. It has up to 120 strength, which is a lot. It buffs up your strength's bonus damage from 2% to 3%, so it makes it 50% more effective. 2 to 3 it might not seem like a lot, but when you're stacking thousands of strength, this item, it adds a lot of damage. In a lot of the builds I've seen, it's usually about a third, around 35% of the total damage. Slapping this on is usually 50% increased total damage from where you're standing at that point. Next we have this. This is an Awakener Craft amulet. Now, keep in mind the Warlord can get both of these mods. The Warlord can get increased strength and increased damage per 15 strength, but that is incredibly rare. Elder can only get the 14% increased strength mod. And these 2 mods combined, they're just mega powerful on an amulet. It's a very expensive option for scaling your damage, but it's an extremely effective one. And also keep in mind, intrinsic catalysts work on all of these modifiers, except for this one. But intrinsic catalysts are very important on these. If you ever have something like this, I would hope you know that. This is a Shaper Warlord craft. It's the same exact concept as the previous amulet. Only difference is it's increased attributes instead of increased strength, and the total, the number is smaller. It's 10 instead of 14. That's post intrinsic catalyst. So moving on to A tier, we have the Pillar of the Caged God. This is a lot of weapon damage per 10 strength. 16% per 10. That's a lot more than what we were looking at before. What's important to know about Pillar of the Caged God, or the hurdle that you're trying to get over when building this, is how do you deal with the very, very low flat base damage that it comes with. This build is, think of it like a Facebreaker build, where you're trying to stack as much flat physical as humanly possible, except you're also trying to stack strength because it has this incredible increased damage per strength modifier on it. This is a good item, and you will see people using it. Over in the B tier, we have items that are less likely to be used, but could be like either budget alternatives or like substitutes until you're looking for something else. Dune Kubiari has 1% increased damage per 8 strength. That's global, so it works on spells. It also has iron. It links a level 30 Iron Will to the gems that are in it. So maybe if you have a spell slinger set up or something that you wanted to put in this, I mean, it doesn't do that much, but it's a little bit of extra added damage. This is a crafted scepter. It can either appear on Elder or Hunter. We already saw this mod before, but I thought it was worth mentioning again because you can use, because it's spell damage, you could just use it on a spellcaster. You don't have to use it on an attacker. It's really effective, and spellcasters are probably going to want something like this on it. It's just extra damage. Over in C tier, these synthesis boots have an implicit that is the same as Aberrath's Hooves. So Aberrath's Hooves has a special ignite proliferation mechanic on it. It's when you kill things, it ignites other things. It also has Aberrath's Fury, which is, you know, a lot of people make builds out of it, but a lesser known thing about it is that it gives you fire damage per 20 strength. If you're focused primarily on this modifier and not so much the other things, then you might want to consider upgrading yourself to a synthesis crafted item that has, like, you know, 30% movement speed, T1 HP, and, you know, maybe a few resistances. Keep in mind, synthesized items can't get any like hunter mods or elder mods or anything like that, so you're stuck with like base mods only. And finally, there is cold conduction. This is typically used in like dex stacking cold builds because usually just dexterity builds have better sources of base cold damage. But if you wanted to do some like cold to fire shenanigans, or if you wanted to just do cold damage because you like doing strength cold damage somehow with some spell, this is a very, very solid option. It's only 1% per 25, but it works with all attributes. So, you know, this thing could be another, you know, 100%, 200% increased damage in your build, maybe even more. This part took the absolute longest for me to put together, and that's mostly because I was looking through PoEDB and looking at all the different synthesized items, but I have it here, S tier. So these are items that where you don't have uniques in your build, you're going to want to be able to increase your strength. You know, we've already looked at this item in the damage scaling portion, but it's also relevant for the percent increased strength portion. Like I said before, both of these mods are warlord mods. The strength mod is also an elder mod. Here are the weights for them. This is the elder one. This is the warlord one. Awakener orbing them is viable. Same with this thing. We already talked about it. It's just a source of increased attributes you can get on Amulet. And the attributes mod is shaper only. Okay, so in the A tier, so for boots, if you don't want to use Alberon's Warpath, which have 18% increased strength, there's a Hunter mod that grants up to 10%, and it elevates all the way to 12. So the elevated version is 12% increased strength, but we're gonna stick to this. The reason why this could be better than Alberon's is Alberon's only has 20% move speed. It has no HP. It has a little bit of chaos res. It has no Ellie res. On rare boots, you know, you could craft this to, you know, slam it with an Awakener Orb, get elusive on it. You get HP. You could get way more move speed. It's just a much more flexible item than Alberon's, but and this is default Alberon's Warpath I'm talking about, not the replica version. You're mostly going to see the default Alberon's in starting builds. Okay, in C tier, we have Elder and Hunter can both get percent increased attributes. It's a 500 weight for Elder, a 400 weight for Hunter, so slightly more rare on the Hunter belts. This isn't ultra hard to get, but it's an option. I just wanted to bring it up. And then for chest piece, Warlord and Elder can both get percent increased strength on the chest. The reason why it might seem like a lot of strength, but the reason why it's in C tier is because it's really difficult to compare this directly to the Iron Fortress, and also Geoffrey Sanctuary. Like whether you want defenses or offenses, those two items usually stack ahead. Now this item could be really powerful if you got like base crit from an Awakener Orb, if you got pretty much any mod that would scale your damage further. But it exists, so it's here. Now for synthesis tier, all of these items are synthesized. I just have them here to show you the mod ranges and what exists. So for amulets, you're mostly going to be seeing people using synthesis amulets. They go from 4% all the way up to 15. You can catalyst it and it goes up to 18 increased strength. This is just an amazing option for strength stackers because it's usually much more budget friendly than trying to craft, some of these crazy items like this. It's just way more budget friendly than that. Rings can have from 4% to 6%. I did see one synthesized ring in Expedition that had a strength increase and a strength dex hybrid increase, and it had 9% increased strength. I thought that was pretty cool. But I've only seen, it might have been bugged, honestly. I've literally only ever seen one item like that with a 2% increased strength on the same implicit. For leather belt, just like helmet, just like amulet, it goes from 4% to 15%. So this is going to be a good budget option. It's why this mod, increased attributes, is in C tier, is because for cheaper and easier to craft, you can just get a synthesized leather belt. Now keep in mind, all synthesized bases, they're not going to be spawned. This isn't stuff that you're going to find like day one of the league or anything like that. It requires you to have good atlas progression and actually be taking like nodes that on the atlas that make it so you can find synthesized items and farming them and dropping them. So this is the type of stuff that, while not super expensive, it's going to take a little while to find. Synthesized gauntlets, pretty much any gloves can get 5% increased strength implicit. Helmets can get up to 5% increased strength, and there's no roll range for either of those. And shields can get 6%. There's no roll range for that. So pretty much anywhere, any slot that you don't have a unique in, you are going to, or you don't have like a special hunter mod or something in it, you are probably going to try to get a synthesized item in that slot to fill out your gear and just make your character more powerful. It's increasing your strength by 1% is one of the most effective ways to increase your total strength, because if you have 1,000 strength and you have 50% increased strength, well, now you have 1,500. This is percent increased strength uniques, and we're back to the hard tiering again, because it's much more easy to look at these things in this way. Emperor's Mastery, it's the best attribute stacking item in the game, pretty much. 7% increased attributes, increased defenses, increased life. It's an incredible item, but it's very expensive. I found it around 50x. That's around what they were priced. Maybe some for 45, some were more. Eyes of the Great Wolf. This is a really strong item, but it's, as you can see, it pulls from a huge pool of mods to find attributes, and it comes corrupted. So whatever attribute roll it comes, if it comes minimum roll, that's what it is. You can't really divine it up from there. So finding something like this, the bottom end of the rolls, they're going to be around 1x, 2x. The top ends of the rolls are going to be 20x. Honestly, next league, if strength stacking is meta enough, I could see a perfect one of these going for like 30x or so, maybe even more. Emperor's Might, it's the same deal as Emperor's Mastery. It's not quite as good, and it's also not quite as rare, so it simply costs less, but it's really good in strength stacking. 6% increased strength, and 10% increased damage, whatever that's worth to you. Over in A tier, we have Zoph's Blood. This is for fire damage only. The specific reason why you would use Zoph's Blood instead of a synthesis amulet or like a Hunter Elder hybrid Omega crafted amulet is this is a budget option that gives you fire penetration and it covers enemy and ash. Those are both incredible stats for fire damage dealers. That's a lot of damage just on those two stats alone. So this is like a great budget option. And you can catalyze it with increased attributes to increase the strength and the percent increased strength further. But ultimately, it's not like a BIS endgame item in any build. It's just really solid. Over in B tier, okay, now we're getting to more like starter items orientated. We have Cyclopean Coil that can roll increased attributes from as low as 5% all the way to 15. It's in the B tier because it's really good for starting, and it's really cheap generally, except for the absolute perfect rolls. You know, you could probably get like a 13% one for, I don't know, like 50C, maybe even less. And then the Catalyst, it also can get hit with the Catalyst to buff that increased attributes up even further. String of Servitude, if you want to go even more budget than Cyclopean Coil, String of Servitude is a corrupted item that pulls from a pool of mods. One of the mods can be increased strength and intelligence, or increased strength and dexterity. And the strength rolls from 12 to 18, same with the dex. It comes corrupted, so you can't catalyst it, unfortunately. It's just a really low level requirement. It's not super rare. Out of all these mods, these are one of the more common things you can hit. So it's just an early game option. Over in C tier, we have Brawn. It has up to 6% increased strength, up to 6% increased dex, but it has reduced intelligence. You can stack these, but the more you stack, the harder it is going to be to get the intelligence that you need for your build. And intelligence isn't even that bad of a stat in most strength stacking builds. It's just not as good as strength usually. So, you know, reducing it's usually not the greatest idea. I think we might see some more people use Brawn now that Repentance is out of the meta, and the intelligence requirement for builds has essentially been brought down from 306 all the way down to 154. I think you might see more bronze being used, especially by chaos attackers. Over in D tier, Alberon's Warpath, I mean, they are in D tier, but these are pretty amazing boots. They have the highest source of percent increased strength in the game on boots, but they just don't have that ultimate in-game flexibility that you'd want out of your boots. You'd want like hunter boots with increased strength, and you know, you can get elusive on those, or you could you get tailwind on those. It's kind of difficult because for tailwind, those are both hunter mods, so you don't have an option to awaken or orb them. But for the Alberon's Warpath, it's great at the beginning. It's insanely cheap. It's D tier. You know what? I'm moving it up to C tier. Fuck you. That's a good item. Black Suncrest. Okay, this is actually a D tier item. I don't know why I had Alberon's here. It's just a helmet. It's for casters because you need, if you're attacking, you probably need Crown of Eyes to multiply the effectiveness of your stats. This would be a good item maybe on like a Pillar of the Caged God, where maybe you're not interested in Iron Fortress plus Crown of Eyes. Maybe you think, hey, I already have so much increased damage per strength. I would rather use Black Sun Crest, and I'd rather get flat damage where I can. Maybe I want the Lore Weave, which has flat damage to attacks on it. And maybe I don't want Iron Fortress. And maybe I don't want Iron Will. So, this could be like a budget option for like a Pillar of the Caged God. It could be a budget option for spellcasters or cast on crit peoples. The increased int, increased dex, they aren't useless. They're not bad. Now that you know how to increase your damage with strength, now that you know how to get flat damage with strength, and now that you know how to increase your strength by 1%, how do you actually get flat strength on your gear? Well, it's really simple. For rare items, most rare items in the game have a suffix that gives them strength. You want tier 1 strength on pretty much every rare that you have. Now for uniques, I'm going to go over the popular ones. Split Personality is the most powerful, and it's going to be the most common strength stacking item that you're going to see in builds. It can either come with strength plus any other mod from these pools. The most powerful ones that you're going to be seeing in builds are strength plus int or strength plus life, depending on what they want. Now, the special mod on it says this jewel has increased effect per allocated passive skill between it and your class's starting location. So what does that mean? It means people build trees. This is an actual tree, by the skeleton of a tree, by the way, that I downloaded off of a Slayer that was doing chaos damage strength stacking. He went all the way up here, all the way down here, all the way over here. This was his real tree, and he put his split person, one of them here, and he put one of them here. And if you look at it, this one was giving him like not quite 100 strength. It's giving him like 80 strength, and this one was giving him, I don't know, what's that, another like 70 strength. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Lethal Pride, you're going to see this in almost every strength stacking build. There's basically no downside other than it takes up a jewel socket. What it does is it puts random bonuses on all the notables in the area, but it also puts plus flat amounts of strength on all the travel nodes. So it simply just gives you a bunch of strength. Ideally, wherever you put your Lethal Pride, you want to tank a bunch of nodes in the area. And then next we have the transformation jewels. You can either transform int into strength, or you can transform dex into strength. And there's transformation jewels of all type. You can transform any stat into any other stat. But you would put that like over here, transform all the dexterity, so that way, you know, this node, it says plus 10 to dexterity, but when you read the unallocating this node, it says you lose strength, because all these nodes are giving strength now. Ideally, the most common use for this is you'd put it like right here, int to strength, and then you'd turn, you know, there's a bunch of int on all these nodes, a whole bunch of int in this area, and they also come with a whole bunch of the conversion, the stat on them. So this one has like plus 20 strength. It rolls up to 24. And the best part about these uniques, they are extremely common, which makes them prime candidates for getting corrupted. Every time one of these drops, I basically corrupt it immediately, because, you know, it's super if I delete it, I lose like maybe a couple C. But if I get corrupted blood on it, I just got like an exalted orb. So that's a really good option. Inertia, this is the dex one. Now for A tier, we have Astramentus. This gives up to 16 of the on the implicit, up to 100, and you can catalyst it with attributes to make it give like, look at this thing. It gives 140 all attributes almost, and you can get it like this at level 20 plus an anoint on top. Sheesh, this thing can have just crazy attributes on it. Astramentus is incredible starting. It's just a huge amount of all attributes, so builds that need like strength and int for whatever reason, this is just going to be a top tier item for. It's not, I don't think Astramentus is BIS in any builds out there, but it's just such a solid starter. It's such a solid flat amount to get you going early on that you're probably going to hold this item until your build is worth like dozens of exalted orbs potentially. In the C tier, these are like actual leveling uniques. Are Meginor's Vice has plus 100 strength, and it gives you some life regen if you have a big chunk of strength. It's good like mega early on, like for literally just leveling. That's about it. Magnate has plus 45 strength. I think it rolls a little bit, and you could catalyst it if you wanted to. Wouldn't recommend it. I mostly use this belt because it has increased flash charges gain. That's what I like the most about this belt. And it has, if you do reach the 200 strength threshold, which isn't hard to hit for like any regular build, especially hopefully it's not hard to hit if you're a strength stacker. It has a bunch of all res on it as well. So those are the popular flat strength sources. This does have like a prophesied version that's like designed for endgame, but people don't use it because obviously you could just get more strength on a rare belt if you really needed to, and there's you get like a synthesized belt. That's why I didn't mention the prophesied version. For flat strength on your gear, it's literally just about going on the tree, picking up strength nodes. You know, you see anywhere you see strength, oh, there's plus 30 strength. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch to get it, but I've seen people take it. And oh, there's 30. Look at that beef. There's 30 strength right there. Final bulky part is previous successful builds. Builds that people put together before 3.16. Talk a little about how they're actually going to get buffed going forward. What things they can adjust about their builds. Not super in depth. We're just looking at the items they have, so that way you know what's going to be powerful, what's going to be popular, etc., etc. So I'm starting off with a cast on crit build with 1.1 million DPS on their Forbidden Right. Cast on crit Forbidden Right builds, we're getting at the absolute top end. The highest I saw was 6 million in Expedition League. But like super high end was 4 million was considered super high end, so it's not the most damage ever, but this seems like it could be a viable option. Interesting things they brought in were the Warlord elevated mod for gaining the accuracy equal to the strength, and they also reduce nearby enemy chaos resistance with Hunter, and they also gain the increased crit chance per 10 strength. That helped them get the crit chance they need. And for their weapon, they used the boom mace with Inke Awi per 50 strength, as that increased strength is very useful. Inke Awi is really good for Forbidden Right. For Iron Fortress, obviously it just increases the scaling effectiveness of strength, so it's good. Repentance, I did not talk about these in the item section really, because these are deprecated. They have a 306 int requirement. They're crap. They basically have no good upsides other than they're common, so it's easy to corrupt them, but finding perfect common one, like perfect ones for corruption, because it has a negative spell damage mod, as if the item wasn't bad enough already. Like this one has 0% reduced spell damage, so this one's perfect basically. Not gonna see it anymore. This int requirement, you could take the intelligence all the way down to 150. Actually, you could take it even lower. I believe on this build you could take it down to like 130. But let's move on. This is the Chaos Attacker. This is kind of, it's not the pinnacle of what people are doing with strength stacking, but it's new. It's very, very powerful, and this is probably the highest damage I saw, while also being omega tanky. Having 9,000 HP is just an incredible amount. They're hitting with Cyclone, and they have 800,000 shockwave on that Cyclone that's triggering. Important thing that I didn't talk about in the item section, because it doesn't actually relate to strength, but it is good for chaos attackers, is Replica Frost Breath. It gives you double damage against chilled enemies, and it says that your chaos damage can chill. So you're doing a boatload of chaos damage, you're chilling them, they're taking double damage. It's basically better than any of the stat sticks that you could equip, and that's why people use it. That's why it's a big reason why this specific build came together. And like I mentioned before, anywhere where you're not using uniques in your build, which the Replica Alberon's Warpath is 100% required for this. This is not required, but it's very good. They're using percent increased strength, increased attack speed, percent increased strength, percent increased strength on synthesis bases wherever they can. This is a pretty min-maxed build, and specifically in POB, I wanted to show it real quick. I have it open. I was tinkering with it. It bugged out a little bit importing it, but I put Iron Will on it. I threw a random node on it, and I took off where are the gloves at? I took off the Repentance, I put on Shaper's Touch. It has the Iron Fortress, and this is what I was talking about with Geoffrey's earlier. This build loses 35% of its damage. That is a huge amount, but it gains 5,000 energy shield flat from this. So the ES on this goes all the way up to 6,600. Your life is at 8,800. This version of it's not really, don't think too much about this because it's not optimized yet. It doesn't have any masteries or anything like that. It would require some minor adjustments, but I just thought that was super cool and worth showing off. You can sacrifice damage and you can get tanky. Cool. This is a interesting take on the chaos stacking. Rather than using the replica Frost Breath, he decided to go with the Paradoxica, which also deals double damage. And he got one that has increased attack speed and it has double damage on it. So it opened up like new node opportunities instead of the other options. You know, this is the guy that pathed all crazy. He put his split personality over here and over here. This is since it's a chaos attacker, the replica Alberons is required. Cyclopean coil with it. This one has attributes modifier from the catalyst, and it got corrupted to gain percent increased strength. So this thing has an absurd amount of increased strength. This is a very cool item that's pretty much late game viable. Like, you know, a synthesized belt only goes up to 18% with quality. This thing it's 7% higher than that. He went with Flicker Strike because I guess that's just what he likes, and he has the replica Feral's Fur. I thought this was a cool build. It's the same as this. It's just a Slayer, so he uses a slightly different part of the tree. Next is the Consecrated Path Totemer with the Brutus Lead Sprinkler. This is super powerful. The damage you're starting to see. This guy did good damage. This guy's doing good damage. You know, this is the damage ranges that are like actually really getting you there. Being able to take off the Repentance in this build would be huge. And then he has synthesized bases on his jewelry, and he has +1 max totems on his shield. That's shaper only, so he's not using a synthesis shield, which that's a great option for this specific build. This is the same build as the last, except it's not using the Iron Fortress or Repentance or Crown of Eyes, and it's doing even more damage. I thought that was very cool. I was not expecting that, but by utilizing the base crit mod on the chest piece along with the percent increased strength plus a really high strength roll, and also using the Warlord mod for accuracy and crit chance and reducing enemy chaos res. I think he bought this from a chaos attacker. Ideally, he would want reduced fire res in this build. And then he also just has like generic gloves that have like strength and damage, attack speed. I thought this was a really cool build. This one has a dual craft fire pen plus strength scaling. Which is a great option for the totemer. And then lastly, we have a Pillar of the Caged God build. People have been playing Pillar of the Caged God for a little while now. It's actually good. It's mostly synthesis items with just T1 strength on them, and as high percent increased strength as you can get. It has a couple like special mods on it. It uses the Iron Fortress because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't need the glove scaling or the helmet scaling because it already is getting so much physical damage. You might as well just dedicate your chest piece to getting as much flat strength as possible. And he needs to dedicate his other pieces, like his gloves. They need to have increased physical flat to attacks. And the jewelry all has T1 phys to attacks, of course, and he's getting T1 physical wherever he can. So I hope these builds inspire you. I hope they let you understand what people are actually going to be doing with strength in 3.16, and hopefully you can either come up with something new or you can build upon what people have already made. I'm going to link everything below. I'm going to link all the POBs. I'm going to link all these builds down below, and thanks for watching.